A humble mother watched as her daughter was handed over to the millionaire father by court order. But when the daughter finally spoke, the judge's expression changed completely. The sun was just beginning to cast its first golden rays over the palm trees of Beverly Hills when Ava Johnson passed through the ornate gates of the exclusive community, her simple cleaning uniform a stark contrast to the sprawling mansions that lined the streets. At 32, her hands already showed the calluses of relentless work, but her eyes held a fire of unyielding determination as she meticulously buffed the marble floors in the lobby of a luxury condominium. Ava couldn't resist a fleeting glance at her reflection in the polished mirror. For a moment, she saw not the tired cleaner she was today, but the hopeful young woman, a housekeeper from 6 years prior. The reflection seemed to whisper secrets she had long tried to silence. The soft chime of the elevator pulled her back to the present. A woman dripping in designer labels stepped out, her gaze sweeping past Ava as if she were part of the furniture. Ava lowered her head and continued her work, her thoughts drifting back to a time that felt both like yesterday and a lifetime ago. The imposing gates of the Sterling estate swung open, revealing a world of opulence Ava could scarcely comprehend. At 26 and full of dreams, she nervously smoothed her freshly pressed uniform and walked toward the grand front door, her heart hammering with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation. In the weeks that followed, Ava became a fixture in the quiet hallways of the mansion, her path frequently crossing that of Richard Sterling, the estate's owner. At first there were only stolen, electrifying glances and shy smiles, but soon the vast empty corridors bore witness to encounters that grew increasingly frequent and intense. One afternoon, while polishing a collection of antique silver in the formal dining room, Ava sensed a presence behind her. The expensive, masculine cologne of Richard filled the air. His large, warm hands settled gently on her shoulders. In that moment, all of Ava's better judgment seemed to dissolve into the heat of the moment. Days melted into weeks of clandestine meetings, stolen kisses in the cavernous pantry, quick touches when no one was looking, and finally, passionate nights in Richard's mahogany-paneled study whenever Veronica, his wife, was out of town. Ava knew she was playing with fire, but the warmth of the passion seemed to melt any sense of danger. Richard spoke of a future together, of how she was different from all the others, and Ava, young and desperately in love, believed every single word. But the fairy tale had a brutal expiration date. One sunny morning, Ava entered the kitchen to find Veronica, the perpetually absent Mrs. Sterling, sitting at the table, her cold eyes piercing through Ava like shards of ice. "You're fired," Veronica said, her voice sharper than glass. "Get out now and never come back." Ava, trembling, looked to Richard for some sign of support, but he remained utterly silent, his gaze fixed on the pristine floor. Without a word, without even a glance, he turned and left the kitchen, abandoning Ava to her fate. With shaking hands, Ava gathered her few belongings, silent tears falling as she left behind not just a job, but the shattered remnants of her dreams and a broken heart. Weeks later, alone in her tiny apartment on the outskirts of Los Angeles, Ava stared at a pregnancy test. 2 bold pink lines stood out in stark defiance. Her hand instinctively went to her abdomen, a wave of both terror and fierce determination washing over her. Near the phone lay Richard's business card, seeming to mock her. Ava picked it up, her fingers tracing his powerful name and number. For a moment, she considered calling him, telling him the truth, but then the memory of Richard turning his back on her that fateful morning returned with crushing force. With a decisive tear, Ava ripped the card into tiny pieces. As the fragments fluttered into the trash, she made a silent vow to the tiny life growing inside her. It will be just us against the world, and that will be more than enough. Back in the present, Ava finished cleaning the lobby, her reflection in the mirror, now showing not just a cleaner, but a warrior, a strong woman, and a devoted mother. As she stored her cleaning supplies, a gentle smile touched her lips. In just a few hours, she would be home, wrapped in the arms of her 6-year-old daughter, the single greatest treasure life could have ever given her. Leaving the gated community behind, Ava walked with her head held high. The secret she carried was a heavy burden, but the love she felt was a force stronger than any regret. The future was uncertain, but one thing was crystal clear. She would do anything for her little Lily. The piercing cry of a newborn echoed through the sterile corridor of the county hospital. Ava, exhausted but radiant, held a tiny pink bundle in her arms. Lily had arrived, bringing with her a tidal wave of love Ava never knew was possible to feel. While other new mothers received bouquets of flowers and streams of visitors, Ava watched the empty doorway of her room. The loneliness was a palpable weight, but Lily's toothless smile was all the company she needed. With trembling fingers, Ava stroked her daughter's delicate face, making a silent promise. "I'll give you the world, my little one." The days in the hospital passed in a blur, and soon Ava found herself back in her minuscule apartment. The stark reality of being a single mother hit her with the force of a freight train. Sleepless nights, an endless cycle of diapers to change, bills to pay. It all felt like an insurmountable mountain. But Ava was forged from something special. With Lily nestled securely against her chest, she faced every challenge head-on. The apartment's peeling walls were soon covered in colorful drawings and photos of a smiling baby. Lily's laughter had the power to transform the hardest days into precious memories. The years flew by in the blink of an eye. Lily grew into a curious and vibrant child, while Ava juggled multiple jobs to keep them afloat. In the morning, she was a house cleaner in Beverly Hills homes. In the afternoon, she worked as a cashier in a Classic Valley diner. At night, she sewed clothes until the early hours. Her calloused hands told stories of relentless hard work, but her eyes shone with immense pride each time Lily reached a new milestone. Her first step, her first word, her first day of school. Every moment was celebrated as if it were a grand victory. On a sunny Saturday, Ava watched Lily playing in the small neighborhood park. Her daughter, now 5, ran and laughed with the other children. Suddenly, Lily stopped, her gaze fixed on a man pushing a little girl on the swing. "Mommy?" Lily asked, her voice filled with innocent curiosity. "Why don't I have a daddy to push me on the swing?" Ava's heart clenched. She pulled Lily close, taking a deep breath before answering. "Some families are different, sweetheart. We have each other, and that makes us special." Lily seemed to accept the answer, but Ava noticed a flicker of sadness in her eyes. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Ava lay awake, revisiting old wounds and painful questions. The financial difficulties, always a constant presence, began to intensify. The rent was raised, the power bills piled up, and Lily's school supplies seemed increasingly expensive. Ava took on extra shifts whenever she could, often coming home just long enough for a quick shower before heading out to the next job. Lily, perceptive beyond her years, started to notice. "Mommy, why are you always tired?" she would ask, her big eyes filled with concern. Ava forced a smile, pulling her daughter in for a tight hug. "This is how mommies show love, sweetheart, working hard to give their daughters the best." But inside, Ava felt the crushing weight of every sacrifice. The nights she went to bed hungry, so Lily could have a full dinner. The mended clothes she wore, so Lily could have a new school uniform. The constant bone-deep fatigue that seemed etched into her very being. One afternoon, while waiting for Lily outside the school, Ava noticed a group of mothers chatting excitedly. They talked about ballet classes, holiday trips, and new toys. Ava felt a sharp pang of guilt. Lily had never taken an extracurricular class, had never been out of the city. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Ava sat at the kitchen table, a pile of bills spread before her. The numbers seemed to dance, mocking her tireless efforts. For the first time in years, she let the tears fall freely. With trembling hands, Ava picked up her old cell phone. Her mother's number, which she hadn't dialed in years due to past disagreements, flashed on the screen. Ava's finger hovered over the call button, her desperate need for help battling her stubborn pride. Before she could decide, a noise from Lily's room startled her. Quickly wiping away her tears, Ava went to check on her daughter. Lily sat up in bed, hugging her favorite teddy bear, a gift Ava had hand-sewn for her first birthday. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "I had a bad dream. Will you stay with me?" Ava lay down beside her daughter, wrapping her in a protective hug. Lily's warmth, the gentle scent of her strawberry shampoo, and the total trust in her sleepy eyes reminded Ava of what truly mattered. "Of course, my love," Ava murmured, kissing Lily's forehead. "Mommy will always be here for you." As Lily drifted back to sleep in her arms, Ava felt her determination rekindle. The challenges were immense, the sacrifices overwhelming, but the love they shared was stronger than any obstacle. The next morning, Ava woke with a plan forming in her mind. She couldn't give Lily everything money could buy, but she could give her experiences, memories, moments of pure joy. At breakfast, Ava surprised Lily with a proposal. "How about we go for a picnic in the park this afternoon? We can bring sandwiches and bake a cake together." Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Really, Mommy? Can we?" The radiant smile on her daughter's face was all the encouragement Ava needed. As they prepared for the day, Ava made a silent promise to herself. She would find a way to improve their lives, no matter how difficult the path became. The difficulties remained, the bills still needed paying, and the future was a frightening unknown. But in that moment, watching Lily dance around the kitchen, humming about their picnic, Ava knew that together they could face anything. Life might be a series of sacrifices, but each of Lily's smiles, every tight hug, every "I love you," Mommy whispered before bedtime made it all worthwhile. Ava might not have much to give in material terms, but the love between mother and daughter was a treasure no amount of money could ever buy. The sound of Lily's dry, rattling cough echoed through the small apartment, breaking Ava's heart. It had been 2 weeks since the fever started, and nothing seemed to help. Lily's once bright, curious eyes were now dull and tired, her rosy cheeks pale and hollow. Ava ran a hand over her daughter's damp forehead, feeling the intense heat radiating from her skin. "How are you feeling, my love?" she asked, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. Lily tried to smile, but was interrupted by another harsh coughing fit. "I'm okay, Mommy," she whispered, her voice hoarse, just a little tired. Ava swallowed the lump in her throat. She knew it wasn't just tiredness. The doctor at the public health clinic had been clear. Lily needed further tests and possibly specialized treatment, things that were terrifyingly beyond Ava's financial reach. That night, after finally getting Lily to sleep, Ava sat at the kitchen table, a stack of medical bills and brochures for private clinics spread in front of her. The numbers danced before her eyes, astronomical figures that mocked her meager savings. With trembling hands, Ava opened a dresser drawer and took out an old shoebox. Inside, carefully folded, was a yellowed page torn from a business magazine. The photo showed a man in an expensive suit, smiling confidently at the camera. Richard Sterling, the face that haunted her dreams and her nightmares. Ava traced the outline of Richard's face with her finger, memories flooding her mind. For years she had sworn never to contact him again, determined to raise Lily on her own. But now, with her daughter's health hanging in the balance, Ava knew she had no other choice. The next morning, after leaving Lily with a kind neighbor, Ava found herself standing in front of the impressive Sterling Enterprises Tower in Century City. Her reflection on the mirrored glass of the entrance revealed a determined woman, though the tremor in her hands betrayed her inner turmoil. "May I help you?" asked the receptionist, polite but dismissive. Ava took a deep breath. "I need to speak with Richard Sterling. It's urgent." The receptionist raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Mr. Sterling is very busy. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but—" Ava began, only to be cut off. "Without an appointment, I can't do anything. Perhaps you'd like to schedule something for next month." Desperation welled up in Ava's chest. "Please," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "It's about his daughter. He doesn't even know he has one." The ensuing silence was deafening. The shocked receptionist finally picked up the phone. Minutes later, Ava was being escorted to the executive elevator. Richard's office was exactly as Ava had imagined, large, luxurious, and intimidating. And there he was, standing behind a massive desk, the years having only sprinkled a few strands of silver at his temples. "Ava?" Richard's voice was loaded with surprise and a hint of something else. Alarm. What is this about? Ava drew a long breath, summoning all her courage. "Richard, we have a daughter." The shock on Richard's face was palpable. He staggered slightly, bracing himself against his desk. "Impossible," he muttered. "You're lying." "She's 6 years old, Richard," Ava continued, her voice growing firmer. "Born 8 months after you fired me. Her name is Lily." Richard shook his head in disbelief. "Why are you telling me this now? Is it money you're after?" The accusation hit Ava like a physical slap. "Lily is sick," she said, tears beginning to form. "She needs treatment, tests. I can't afford. I had no choice." The silence that followed was heavy, laden with years of unspoken emotions and buried secrets. Richard finally spoke, his voice a mix of anger and confusion. "How can I be sure? How do I know this child is really mine?" Ava pulled a worn photo of Lily from her bag. "Look at her, Richard. She has your eyes, your smile." Richard took the photo with shaking hands. For a fleeting moment, his mask of cold indifference slipped, and Ava glimpsed the man she had once fallen in love with. But just as quickly as it appeared, the vulnerability vanished. "That doesn't prove anything," Richard said, his voice harsh. "I want a DNA test." Ava nodded, already expecting it. "I'll do whatever it takes. Lily needs help, Richard. She's your daughter." In the days that followed, Ava lived in a whirlwind of anxiety. Waiting for the DNA test results felt like an eternity. Every one of Lily's coughs, every soft moan of pain, was a cruel reminder of time slipping away. Finally, the envelope arrived. With trembling hands, Ava opened it, her heart pounding in her chest. The words leaped off the page. Probability of paternity, 99.999%. The phone rang almost immediately. It was Richard, his voice a storm of emotions Ava couldn't decipher. "So it's true," he said, almost in a whisper. "I have a daughter." "Yes," Ava replied, silent tears streaming down her face. "And she needs you. Now." There was a pause, a hesitation that seemed to last an eternity. Then Richard spoke, his voice resolute. "Tell me what Lily needs. I'll do whatever is necessary." As she hung up the phone, Ava felt a confusing mix of relief and apprehension. The future was a great unknown, but for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. Lily would have a chance to get better, to grow up healthy and strong. But as the initial relief faded, new worries began to surface. How would this revelation change their lives? How would Lily react to learning about her father? And was Richard truly ready to be a dad? Ava looked toward the room where Lily slept, her small chest rising and falling with still labored breaths. No matter what the future held, Ava knew one thing for sure. She would do anything to protect her daughter, to ensure Lily had every opportunity she deserved. With a deep sigh, Ava began bracing herself for the changes to come. The desperate decision she had made would open a new chapter in their lives, a chapter filled with uncertainties but also possibilities. She would face every challenge, every obstacle, with the same resolve that had guided her for the past 6 years. For Lily, she would be strong. For Lily, she would face the past and the future, no matter how frightening they seemed. Richard Sterling's office was silent, the tension thick in the air. Ava sat stiffly in the chair across from the imposing mahogany desk, her eyes fixed on the man she had once loved. Richard paced back and forth, his expression a volatile mix of anger and disbelief. 6 years, Richard finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You kept my daughter from me for 6 years." Ava felt a shiver run down her spine. "I didn't hide her, Richard. You fired me, remember? You chose your wife, your perfect life. I did what I thought was best for Lily." Ava's words seemed to ignite Richard's fury even more. He slammed his hands on the desk, making Ava jump. "The best? Depriving a child of her father is the best? You had no right." "And you had the right to toss me aside like garbage?" Ava shot back, years of accumulated hurt spilling into her voice. "I was pregnant and alone. I did what I had to do." Richard paused, his eyes narrowing dangerously. "Well, things are going to change now. Lily is my daughter, and she deserves the best, something you obviously can't provide." Ava's heart turned to ice. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Richard said, leaning across his desk, "that I'm filing for full custody of Lily. I have the resources, the lawyers, everything needed to give her the life she deserves." Ava stood up abruptly, panic gripping her. "You can't do this. Lily hardly knows you?" "Thanks to you," Richard spat the words. "But that will change. I suggest you prepare Lily. Soon she'll be living where she always should have been, with me." Ava left the office in a daze, her legs barely supporting her. The world around her seemed to spin, Richard's threats echoing in her mind. She had come asking for help, and now she stood to lose everything. In the days that followed, Ava lived in a constant state of alert. Every slow-moving car that passed by, every curious glance from a stranger, threw her into a panic. Lily, still recovering from her illness, noticed her mother's tension. "Mommy, why are you so worried?" Lily asked one night, her big eyes filled with concern. Ava forced a smile, pulling her daughter in for a tight hug. "It's nothing, sweetheart. Mommy's just tired." But inside, Ava was in turmoil. She knew she couldn't wait for Richard to make the first move. One night, after Lily had fallen asleep, Ava began packing their lives into boxes. Clothes, documents, her small savings, everything was carefully boxed up. The next morning, before dawn, Ava gently woke Lily. "Sweetie, we're going on a surprise trip. Isn't that exciting?" Lily, still groggy, nodded with a sleepy smile. Before long, they were on the road, leaving behind the only home Lily had ever known. As she drove, Ava kept glancing nervously in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a fleet of black luxury cars chasing them. But the hours passed, and nothing happened. When they finally stopped in a small, forgotten town hundreds of miles away, Ava allowed herself to breathe a little easier. What Ava didn't know was that at that very moment, Richard was in his office, seething with rage. He had sent his lawyers to serve the custody papers, only to discover that Ava and Lily had vanished. "Find them," Richard growled at the private detective he had hired. "I don't care how much it costs or how long it takes. Find my daughter." Days turned into weeks. Ava and Lily moved from town to town, never staying in one place long enough to settle. Lily, who was initially excited about the adventure, began showing signs of exhaustion and confusion. "Mommy, when are we going back home?" she would often ask. Each time Ava heard the question, her heart clenched. "Soon, sweetheart, very soon." But Ava knew she was only postponing the inevitable. Their meager resources were running out, and Lily needed stability. With a heavy heart, Ava finally decided to return. Upon arriving back in their hometown, Ava was immediately confronted with a harsh reality. Posters with photos of her and Lily were plastered everywhere, announcing they were missing. It didn't take long for the police to knock on her door. Ava was taken in for questioning while social workers looked after Lily. The nightmare she had feared for so long was becoming a stark reality. In the following days, Ava found herself in the middle of a legal whirlwind. Richard had filed for emergency custody, alleging Ava was unstable and a danger to Lily. Each accusation, every insinuation in the legal documents, felt like a stab to Ava's heart. "They can't do this," Ava sobbed to Sarah, the pro bono lawyer who had taken her case. "Lily is my life. She's all I have." Sarah took Ava's hand, her gaze empathetic. "We'll fight, Ava. Richard may have money and influence, but you have the truth on your side. You're a good mother." But as the legal battles raged on, Ava found herself pushed further and further from Lily. The supervised visits were excruciating, with Lily constantly asking when she could come home for good. One night, alone in her empty apartment, Ava allowed herself to completely fall apart. The tears she had held back for weeks finally flowed freely. The fear of losing Lily, the only light in her life, was overwhelming. Yet, in the midst of her despair, Ava found a spark of determination. Looking at a photo of Lily smiling, she made a silent promise. No matter what Richard threw at her, no matter how many resources he had, she would fight. She would fight with every fiber of her being to keep her daughter. "I won't give up, Lily," Ava whispered to the photo. "Mommy is here, and I always will be. I promise." With that promise echoing in her heart, Ava prepared for the battle of her life. The road would be difficult, the obstacles immense, but for Lily, she would face them all. The war for Lily's custody was only just beginning, and Ava was determined to win. The office was small and stuffy, piles of legal files covering every available surface. Ava sat uncomfortably in the worn chair, watching the lawyer in front of her flip through her case with an increasingly grim expression. "I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson," he finally said, closing the folder, "but I can't take your case. Mr. Sterling has practically unlimited resources. It would be a lost battle." Ava felt her heart sink. This was the fifth lawyer to refuse her case that week. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking, "my daughter is all I have." The lawyer looked at her with pity. "I understand, but I can't help you. Maybe it's better to accept some kind of agreement with Mr. Sterling." Ava left the office feeling utterly defeated. The light drizzle falling mirrored the gloom in her soul. As she walked aimlessly through the city streets, her mind whirled. How could she possibly fight Richard without legal representation? How could she keep Lily without any resources at all? That was when, in her moment of deepest desperation, Ava noticed a small sign in a fogged-up window. Community Legal Clinic. With her heart pounding, she pushed the rusty door open and went inside. The clinic's interior was as modest as its exterior, but there was an air of scrappy determination about the place. Sitting behind a desk buried in law books was a middle-aged woman with gray hair pulled into a severe bun and reading glasses perched on her nose. "May I help you?" the woman asked, peering over her glasses. I need a lawyer," Ava stammered, "but I have no money." The woman gestured to the chair in front of her. "Please sit. I'm Sarah Walker. Tell me your story." Ava's words poured out of her like a dam bursting. She spoke of Lily, of Richard, of the threats and the constant fear. Sarah listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. When Ava finished, tears shining in her eyes, Sarah removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. "Your case is complicated, Miss Johnson, and Mr. Sterling will certainly have the best lawyers money can buy." Ava felt her heart sink again. But then Sarah smiled, a determined gleam in her eyes. "But you know what? I've always loved a good challenge. I'll represent you pro bono." The wave of relief Ava felt was overwhelming. For the first time in weeks, she sensed a flicker of hope. "Thank you," she whispered, tears of gratitude streaming down her cheeks. "Thank you so much." The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Though retired, Sarah proved to be a tireless advocate. She pored over every detail of the case, preparing arguments and counter-arguments, training Ava for what was to come. Finally, the day of the first hearing arrived. The courthouse was imposing, its grand marble columns seeming to mock Ava's smallness. She gripped Sarah's hand, seeking strength. "Remember," Sarah whispered, "you're Lily's mother. You raised her, loved her, sacrificed everything for her. No one can take that away from you." Entering the courtroom, Ava immediately spotted Richard, looking impeccable in his expensive suit. He was flanked by an aggressive-looking team of lawyers. Their eyes met for a moment, sending a shiver down Ava's spine. Judge Michael Thompson entered, and everyone rose. He was a middle-aged man with a stern expression that revealed nothing. "We are here today to discuss custody of the minor, Lily Johnson," Judge Thompson began. "Mr. Sterling, I understand you are seeking full custody." Richard's lead attorney stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Sterling has only recently discovered he has a daughter, a child who was kept secret from him for 6 years. He seeks to rectify this injustice and provide the child with the life she deserves." Ava felt her blood boil at the insinuation, but Sarah placed a calming hand on her arm. The attorney continued, "Mr. Sterling is a successful businessman with more than sufficient resources to guarantee the best for Lily. A top-notch education, excellent health care, all the opportunities Ms. Johnson simply cannot offer." Ava watched in dismay as Judge Thompson nodded thoughtfully. Her heart sank further when Richard was called to testify. Richard painted an impressive picture. He spoke of his thriving company, his connections, and the grand plans he had for Lily. "I can give her the world," he said, his voice laden with rehearsed emotion, "everything a child could ever want." When it was Ava's turn to testify, she felt as if her legs were made of jelly. Sarah gave her an encouraging smile as she approached the witness stand. "Ms. Johnson," Sarah began gently, "why didn't you tell Mr. Sterling about your pregnancy when you discovered it?" Ava took a deep breath, recalling Sarah's advice to be honest. "I was scared," she admitted. "Richard, Mr. Sterling, had just fired me. He made it clear he didn't want me in his life. I was afraid he'd reject Lily, or worse, try to take her from me. But in the last 6 years, I've done everything for Lily," Ava said, her voice growing stronger. "I worked 3 jobs to support her. I stayed up all night when she was sick. I celebrated every single achievement, no matter how small. Lily is my entire life." Richard's attorney rose for cross-examination. "Ms. Johnson, so you admit you deprived Lily of a life of comfort and opportunity by deliberately hiding her from Mr. Sterling?" Ava felt tears well up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I gave Lily what she needed most, my unconditional love." When the hearing ended, Ava was emotionally exhausted. Judge Thompson announced he would need time to consider the arguments presented. "How did it go?" Ava asked Sarah anxiously as they left the courtroom. Sarah sighed. It was a rough start. Judge Thompson seemed inclined to believe Richard's arguments about financial stability. "But don't lose hope, Ava. This is just the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead of us." Ava looked at the imposing courthouse building, feeling the weight of the battle to come. But then she remembered Lily's smile, the warmth of her hugs, and she felt a new determination build inside her. "I'm ready," she told Sarah, "for whatever it takes. For Lily?" Sarah smiled, squeezing Ava's shoulder. "That's the spirit we need. Remember, Ava, sometimes the greatest victories come from the hardest battles. And this is a battle worth fighting." As they walked together along the sidewalk, Ava knew the journey would be long and arduous, but with Sarah at her side and her love for Lily in her heart, she was ready to face whatever came next. The legal battle had just begun, but Ava was determined to fight to the end. The courtroom was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. Ava sat rigidly next to Sarah, her eyes fixed on Judge Thompson. On the other side of the aisle, Richard radiated confidence, surrounded by his high-priced legal team. "The court calls Ms. Ava Johnson to testify," the judge announced. With trembling legs, Ava walked to the witness stand. As she was sworn in, her eyes briefly met Richard's. What she saw there, a mix of anger and something that might have been remorse, made her stomach churn. Richard's attorney, a man in a sharp suit and a slick smile, approached. "Ms. Johnson, could you tell us about your relationship with Mr. Sterling?" Ava took a deep breath, remembering Sarah's advice to be honest yet cautious. "I worked as a housekeeper in Mr. Sterling's home. We became romantically involved." "An affair, you mean?" the attorney pressed. "With a married man?" Ava felt the heat rise in her cheeks. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "And when exactly did this affair begin?" "About 7 months before I was fired." The attorney smirked, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fired or caught, Miss Johnson? Objection. Sarah stood up, leading. Sustained, Judge Thompson said. Rephrase, counsel. The questioning continued, each inquiry dredging up painful details of the past. Ava spoke of secret meetings, whispered promises, and the dream of a future together that never materialized. When it was Sarah's turn to question her, she took a gentler approach. Ava, why did you decide not to tell Mr. Sterling about the pregnancy? Ava looked directly at Richard. Because when his wife found out about us, he fired me without a moment's hesitation. He didn't fight for me, didn't try to contact me afterwards. I was alone and scared. I feared he'd reject Lily or try to take her away. The courtroom fell silent for a moment, absorbing her words. The next witness took everyone by surprise. Veronica, Richard's ex-wife, walked into the courtroom with determined steps. Mrs. Sterling, Sarah began, could you tell us about your marriage to Mr. Sterling? Veronica nodded, her gaze cold. Richard was always unfaithful. Ava wasn't the first, nor the last. When I found out about her, I demanded that Richard fire her. He did so without question. The room buzzed with whispers, and Ava saw Richard shift uncomfortably in his seat. What about Ava's pregnancy? Sarah asked. Veronica hesitated for a moment. I suspected, but I chose not to tell Richard. Our marriage was already falling apart, and I didn't want to give him a reason to leave me for her. The revelations continued, painting a complex picture of betrayals, lies, and broken hearts. When Richard's attorney stood to cross-examine Veronica, his strategy became clear. So, Mrs. Sterling, don't you think Ava, knowing she was pregnant by a wealthy man, might have been trying to secure her financial future? Veronica frowned. I can't speak to Ava's intentions. All I know is that Richard has a history of using and discarding women. The attorney smiled triumphantly. No further questions, Your Honor. As the day's session ended, Ava felt emotionally drained. The revelations, the subtle accusations, all weighed heavily on her shoulders. Outside the courtroom, life carried on, though with new difficulties. Lily, now aware that something big was happening, began showing signs of stress at school. Ms. Johnson, Lily's teacher said worriedly on the phone, Lily had another episode today. She refused to join in activities and spent recess all alone. Ava closed her eyes, guilt stabbing at her. I understand. I'll talk to her. Thank you for letting me know. That night, as she prepared dinner, Ava watched Lily quietly drawing at the kitchen table. The contrast between the once chatty, happy Lily and the withdrawn version before her broke Ava's heart. Lily, sweetheart, Ava began softly, sitting beside her daughter. How was school today? Lily shrugged, not looking up from her drawing. Fine. Ava took a deep breath. You know, it's okay if you feel confused or scared about everything that's going on. Lily finally looked up, her eyes brimming with tears she hadn't shed. Why does that man want to take me away, Mommy? Did I do something wrong? Ava's heart shattered. She pulled Lily into a tight hug. No, my love, you did nothing wrong. It's complicated, but I promise, no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you. In the days that followed, Ava strove to maintain a sense of normalcy for Lily. They kept their bedtime reading routine, baked cookies on weekends, and even planned a small picnic at the local park. Meanwhile, Sarah worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Her tiny office at the community legal clinic became their command center, with piles of documents, law books, and empty coffee cups covering every surface. We have to be prepared for anything they throw at us, Sarah said, flipping furiously through a thick law book. Richard has resources, but we have the truth on our side. One night, after another long day in court, Ava found Sarah still working, the clock on the wall showing well past midnight. Sarah, you need to rest, Ava said gently. Sarah looked up, her eyes tired but resolute. I can't, Ava, not when there's so much at stake. Lily deserves to have her mother, and I'll do everything in my power to ensure that. Ava felt tears of gratitude well up in her eyes. Why are you doing all this for us? Sarah gave a weary smile. Because it's the right thing to do, and because, a long time ago, I was in your shoes, battling all odds to keep my son. Someone fought for me then. Now, it's my turn to pay it forward." The two women shared a moment of silent understanding. The battle was far from over, but with allies like Sarah, Ava felt that maybe, just maybe, they had a chance. On her way home that night, Ava reflected on everything that had happened. The past she had tried so desperately to bury had resurfaced forcefully, bringing pain and uncertainty. But it had also brought clarity. She now knew, more than ever, that she would fight with all her might to keep Lily, because in the end, no matter what the court decided or what Richard or his lawyers said, what truly mattered was the unconditional love between a mother and her daughter. And Ava knew that love was stronger than any obstacle they could throw in their path. The sun had barely risen when Ava heard urgent knocking at her door. Confused and still sleepy, she got up, only to be greeted by a blinding flash as she cracked the curtain open. "Miss Johnson! Miss Johnson! Can you give us a statement about the case?" Ava's heart pounded. Outside, a small crowd of reporters and photographers had gathered, cameras and microphones aimed at her window. The story had leaked. With trembling hands, Ava picked up her phone and dialed Sarah's number. "I already know," Sarah said before Ava could speak. "Don't open the door. Don't talk to anyone. I'm on my way." In the minutes that followed, Ava rushed to Lily's room, finding the girl awake and frightened by the commotion. "Mommy, what's going on?" Lily asked, her eyes wide with fear. Ava forced a reassuring smile. "Nothing you need to worry about, sweetie. Let's get ready quickly, okay? We need to leave a little earlier today." As she helped Lily get dressed, Ava could hear the growing buzz outside. The reporters' voices melded into a constant, threatening hum. Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, slipping in through the back to avoid the press. "This is crazy," she muttered, yanking the curtain shut. "Someone must have leaked the details of the case to the media." "How are we going to get out of here?" Ava asked, panic evident in her voice. Sarah gave her a determined look. "Leave it to me." With Sarah's help, Ava and Lily managed to escape through the back door, quickly getting into Sarah's car parked in a nearby alley. As they drove away, Ava caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror of the reporters still crowding her front door, oblivious to their departure. But the peace didn't last long. When they reached Lily's school, more reporters and cameras were waiting. "How did they know?" Ava whispered, horrified. Lily clung tightly to her mother's hand. "Mommy, I don't want to go." Ava's heart broke at the fear in her daughter's eyes. "That's okay, sweetheart. We'll go somewhere else today." Meanwhile, across town, Richard Sterling was giving an impromptu press conference in front of his company building. "It is with great regret that I confirm the rumors," he said, his voice laden with carefully practiced emotion. "I recently discovered I have a daughter, a child who was hidden from me for 6 years. I am doing everything in my power to correct this injustice and ensure my daughter has the life she deserves." The cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every calculated expression Richard gave. He painted the image of a loving father, wronged by an opportunistic former employee. In the days that followed, Ava's life became a media nightmare. Cameras and microphones followed her everywhere she went. Tabloids plastered sensational headlines. "Seductive housekeeper conceals millionaire's daughter," or "a father's fight to reclaim his stolen child." Lily, unable to attend school due to the media harassment, grew more withdrawn by the day. Ava often found her staring sadly out the window, watching other children play freely. One night, after putting Lily to bed, Ava collapsed on the couch, finally letting the day's tears flow. "I can't do this anymore, Sarah," she sobbed on the phone. "It's destroying Lily. Maybe it's better if I just give up." "Don't even think that," Sarah's firm voice came through the line. "That's exactly what Richard wants. He's using the media to pressure you, to make you look like the villain. But we know the truth, Ava. You're an incredible mother who only wants the best for her daughter." "But Lily is suffering," Ava argued, her voice breaking. "And you think she'll suffer less away from you?" Sarah countered gently. "Ava, You're her safe haven. Yes, things are tough right now, but this will pass, and when it does, Lily will need her mother by her side." Sarah's words, though tough, held the truth Ava needed to hear. She took a deep breath, drying her tears. "What do we do now?" she asked, a sliver of determination returning to her voice. "First, we need to get you and Lily out of this house," Sarah replied. "I have a friend with a cabin up in Big Bear. You can stay there for a while, away from prying eyes." Over the next few days, Ava and Lily moved to the quiet mountain town. The peace and calm of the rural setting were a much-needed reprieve after the chaos of the city. One afternoon, as she watched Lily play carefree in the garden, Ava felt her determination renew. She couldn't give up, not when so much was at stake. Sarah visited regularly, bringing updates on the case and strategies for handling the media. "Remember, Ava," she would say, "the truth always comes out. Our job is to make sure it's heard above the noise." Together, they worked on a carefully crafted statement for the press. For the first time, Ava would speak out, not as the seductive housekeeper the tabloids had painted her to be, but as a devoted mother fighting for her daughter's well-being. On the night before returning to the city for the next hearing, Ava found Lily sitting on the porch, gazing at the stars. "What are you thinking about, sweetheart?" Ava asked, settling down beside her. Lily was quiet for a moment before answering. "Mommy, why does that man on TV say he's my dad? Why does he want to take me away?" Ava's heart clenched. She pulled Lily close, hugging her tightly. "It's complicated, my love, but I want you to know one thing. No matter what happens, no matter what they say on TV or in the papers, you're the most important thing in the world to me. And I will fight with everything I have for us to stay together." Lily looked up, tears unshed, glistening in her eyes. "Promise?" "I promise," Ava replied, kissing her daughter's forehead. That night, while Lily slept peacefully, Ava lay awake, thinking about what was to come. The battle was far from over, and the media attention had made everything more complicated. But with Lily by her side and Sarah in her corner, Ava knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. Tomorrow they would return to the city and the glaring eye of the media storm. But for now, under the peaceful glow of the stars, Ava allowed herself a moment of hope. The truth was on her side, and she would make sure it was heard, no matter how many cameras or microphones tried to distort it. The courtroom was packed that morning, the buzz of the crowd and the incessant click of cameras creating a tense atmosphere. Ava, seated beside Sarah, felt her heart pounding wildly. Opposite them, Richard wore his usual confident expression, flanked by his elite legal team. Judge Thompson entered the room, and silence fell over the assembly. "Before we proceed," he announced, "the court has been informed of a new witness the defense would like to call, Ms. Emily Davis." A murmur of surprise swept through the room as a middle-aged woman of unremarkable appearance walked up to the witness stand. Ava noticed Richard suddenly look uncomfortable, fiddling nervously with his tie. Sarah stood up, a determined glint in her eyes. "Ms. Davis, can you tell us about your relationship with Mr. Sterling?" Emily took a deep breath before answering. "I worked as Mr. Sterling's executive assistant for 5 years, until 2 months ago." "And why did you leave your job?" Emily hesitated, casting a quick glance at Richard. I was forced to resign after rejecting Mr. Sterling's advances." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Thompson banged his gavel, calling for order. "Ms. Davis," Sarah continued, "could you elaborate on those advances?" "It started with inappropriate remarks, then accidental touches," Emily explained, her voice trembling slightly. "When I made it clear I wasn't interested, Mr. Sterling started threatening me. He said he'd ruin my career if I didn't give in." Ava watched Richard's face grow paler as Emily continued her testimony, describing a pattern of behavior. Richard would seduce female employees, promise them the world, and then discard them when he grew bored or they refused him. "What about Ms. Johnson?" Sarah asked. "Were you working for Mr. Sterling at the time she was employed in his home?" Emily nodded. "Yes. I knew about their affair. Mr. Sterling made me file her termination paperwork when his wife found out." He didn't hesitate. Ava felt a swirl of emotions, validation that her story was being confirmed, but also sadness at reliving those painful moments. Richard's attorney rose for cross-examination, his voice sharp. "Ms. Davis, why should we believe you? Aren't you just a resentful former employee because you were let go?" Emily lifted her chin, defiance in her eyes. "I wasn't let go. I was forced to resign. And I have proof." Then she dropped a bombshell. Emails, text messages, and even audio recordings documenting Richard's predatory behavior. The courtroom was stunned by the evidence. While the judge scrutinized the evidence, Ava noticed Richard whispering furiously with his lawyers. She couldn't hear what they were saying, but their body language was tense and frantic. That evening, after court adjourned, Ava was exhausted, but hopeful. Emily's revelations had changed the tone of the trial. As she walked to the car with Sarah, a young man approached them nervously. "Ms. Johnson," he whispered, glancing around as if afraid of being seen. I work for Mr. Sterling. I think you need to see this." He handed Ava an envelope before disappearing into the night. With trembling hands, Ava opened it, finding documents and a flash drive. "What's this?" Sarah asked, concerned. "I'm not sure," Ava replied, "but I think we just got more ammunition." Back at Sarah's apartment, they examined the envelope's contents. What they found left them speechless. Proof that Richard had tried to bribe Emily into changing her testimony. "This is huge, Ava," Sarah said, her eyes shining with excitement. "It not only corroborates Emily's testimony, but also reveals Richard's true character." The next morning, Sarah presented the new evidence in court. Judge Thompson, visibly disturbed by the revelations, called for a recess to review everything carefully. When the session resumed, the atmosphere in the courtroom had changed dramatically. Judge Thompson leveled a stern gaze at Richard before speaking. "Mr. Sterling, these accusations are extremely serious. Attempting to bribe a witness is a grave offense. I am inclined to refer this matter for criminal investigation." For the first time since the trial began, Richard appeared genuinely rattled. His lawyers whispered urgently, attempting damage control. The judge continued, "In light of this new evidence, I am seriously reconsidering my stance on this custody case. Financial stability is important, yes, but moral character is equally crucial when determining a child's best interests." Ava felt a wave of relief and hope flood her. She looked at Sarah, who smiled reassuringly. Outside the courthouse, the media narrative began to shift. The same tabloids that had painted Ava as a gold digger now questioned Richard's character. Headlines such as "Tech Tycoon accused of harassment and bribery" and "A mother's fight against a corrupt system" began appearing. Ava, who had previously avoided reporters, found the courage to speak briefly. "All I ever wanted was to protect my daughter and give her a life full of love. I'm not fighting Mr. Sterling, I'm fighting for Lily." Her sincerity and emotion resonated with the public. On social media, support hashtags for Ava began to spread. People shared their own stories of custody battles, abusive partners, and the sacrifices made for their children. Richard, on the other hand, watched his public image crumble rapidly. Former employees, emboldened by Emily's testimony, came forward with their own stories of harassment and manipulation. One evening, as Ava helped Lily with her homework, she received an unexpected call. It was Veronica, Richard's ex-wife. "Ava," Veronica said, her voice trembling, I want to testify again. There are things I didn't say before, things about Richard that the court needs to know." Ava stayed silent for a moment, processing the information. "Why now?" she finally asked. Veronica let out a deep sigh. "Because I saw Emily's courage, and yours. Because Lily deserves the truth. And because it's time Richard faces the consequences of his actions." After hanging up, Ava found Lily watching her curiously. "Who was that, Mommy?" Ava smiled softly, pulling Lily in for a hug. "Someone who wants to help us, sweetheart. Someone who sees how special you are, and how much I love you." Holding her daughter tight, Ava felt a renewed surge of determination. The recent bombshells had changed the game, but the fight wasn't over yet. Still, for the first time since this nightmare began, Ava felt she had a real chance of winning. The path ahead was uncertain, but Ava knew one thing for sure. She would keep fighting, not just for herself, but for Lily, and for every other Ava out there facing giants with nothing but love and determination. The truth was surfacing, and with it, the hope for a future in which Ava and Lily could finally live in peace, free from the shadows of the past and the threats of the present. The courtroom was hushed as Sarah rose, a thick folder in her hands. Judge Thompson watched her intently while Richard and his lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. "Your Honor," Sarah began, her voice firm and clear, "I'd like to present crucial new evidence for this case." She walked to the judge's bench, handing over a copy of the documents. These records show a consistent pattern of manipulative and abusive behavior by Mr. Sterling. While the judge examined the documents, Sarah went on. "We have statements from former employees, records of confidential settlements, and even evidence of recent attempts to bribe witnesses." Richard's lead attorney jumped up. "Objection, Your Honor. These alleged pieces of evidence have not been properly verified or admitted." Judge Thompson raised his hand, silencing him. "I will review this evidence carefully. Proceed, Ms. Walker." Sarah nodded, turning to face Richard directly. "Mr. Sterling, you claim you seek custody of Lily out of paternal love, yet these documents suggest a history of using and discarding people for your own benefit. How do you explain this discrepancy?" Visibly uncomfortable, Richard adjusted his tie before responding. "These accusations are absurd and slanderous. I'm here solely for my daughter's welfare." "Your daughter," Sarah repeated, "whom you didn't know existed until a few months ago? The same daughter you threatened to take from her mother the moment you learned of her existence? Does that sound like paternal love to you?" The courtroom buzzed with murmurs, and Ava felt a surge of gratitude for Sarah. For the first time, Richard's true intentions were being questioned outright. Judge Thompson, after a few moments of reflection, made an announcement that took everyone by surprise. "In light of this new evidence and the complex nature of this case, I'm ordering a full psychological evaluation of all parties involved, including the minor, Lily." Ava's heart tightened. The thought of Lily undergoing a psychological assessment worried her deeply. In the days that followed, Ava, Richard, and Lily went through extensive interviews and tests with court-appointed psychologists. Ava tried to remain strong during her own examination, answering honestly about her relationship with Lily, her struggles as a single mother, and her feelings toward Richard. The hardest part, however, was letting Lily go in alone with the child psychologist, Dr. Samantha Green. Ava waited anxiously outside, imagining what her daughter might say, and dreading that somehow her words would be used against them. When the session ended, Lily came out wearing a small smile. "Dr. Green is nice, Mommy," she said. "We drew pictures and talked about you in school and that man who says he's my dad." Ava hugged Lily tightly, fighting back tears. "You were so brave, my love." Later that night, after putting Lily to bed, Ava allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Seated at the kitchen table, she confided her fears to Sarah. "What if Richard's money influences the results?" she asked, her voice trembling. "He can hire the best lawyers, the best experts. How can I compete with that?" Sarah placed a comforting hand on Ava's shoulder. "Money can buy many things, Ava, but it can't buy a child's genuine love for her mother. Trust the process. Trust Lily." Meanwhile, the case had captured national attention. Newspapers, TV programs, and social media buzzed with debates about the merits of each side. Hashtags like "Natural Justice for Lily" and "Mother's Rights" went viral, with people nationwide expressing support for Ava. One morning, Ava was stunned to see her face on the front page of a national newspaper alongside a photo of Richard. The headline read, "Custody Battle Exposes Inequalities in the Legal System." The article detailed how the case had become a flashpoint for discussions on privilege, parental rights, and the modern definition of family. Experts weighed in, debating the merits of financial stability versus emotional bonds in raising a child. Ava found herself at the center of a far bigger debate than she ever imagined. People she'd never met were discussing her life, her story, her choices. It was surreal and often frightening. "How do we handle all this attention?" Ava asked Sarah, feeling overwhelmed. "We keep the focus on what truly matters." "Lily," Sarah answered firmly. "All this attention might feel crushing, but it also means more people are seeing the truth. They see you, Ava, as the devoted mother you are." As the case moved forward, Ava felt they were at a critical turning point. The new evidence, the psychological evaluations, and the public attention were shifting the dynamics of the trial. One afternoon, while waiting to enter the courtroom, Ava noticed something different about Richard. He seemed less confident, more on edge. Their eyes met briefly, and Ava saw in him something she'd never seen before: doubt. In that moment, Ava felt a spark of hope light in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, the truth was finally surfacing. Maybe love and devotion could triumph over power and money. With Lily by her side and Sarah as her tireless advocate, Ava stepped into the courtroom, ready to face whatever was next. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, she felt she had a real chance at victory. The courtroom was packed, tension palpable. Ava sat upright, her hands trembling slightly, as she waited for Judge Thompson to enter. Richard, across the room, appeared outwardly calm, but his eyes betrayed his anxiety. Judge Thompson entered, his expression solemn. "After careful review of the evidence presented, including the psychological evaluations and recent testimonies, I've arrived at a preliminary decision," he announced, his voice echoing in the hushed room. Ava held her breath, her heart pounding. "I grant temporary custody of Lily Johnson to her mother, Ava Johnson, while the proceedings continue," declared Judge Thompson. A collective sigh of relief swept the room. Ava felt such an intense wave of relief that tears sprang to her eyes. Sarah squeezed her shoulder in silent support. Richard, however, was visibly furious. He leaned in toward his lawyers, speaking in an urgent whisper. The judge went on to detail the terms of the temporary custody and supervised visitation for Richard. Outside the courtroom, Ava was met by a small group of reporters. She offered only a brief comment. "I'm grateful for the judge's decision and look forward to continuing to care for my daughter." In the days that followed, it became clear Richard wouldn't accept defeat easily. His legal team filed a flurry of motions, contesting the judge's order and demanding further hearings. More disturbing still, Ava began noticing strange cars parked near her home, men with cameras quietly following her. Sarah confirmed her suspicions. Richard had hired private investigators. "He's digging into your past, Ava," Sarah said gravely, "looking for anything he can use against you. We need to be prepared." Ava felt a knot form in her stomach, but there's nothing to find. I've always lived a simple, honest life. Sarah nodded, but concern clouded her eyes. Even so, they might try to twist innocent details. We have to stay vigilant. The stress of it all began taking a toll on Lily. One night, Ava woke to her daughter's terrified screams. Rushing to Lily's room, she found the girl sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. "Mommy!" Lily sobbed, throwing herself into Ava's arms. "I dreamed they were taking me away, that I'd never see you again." Ava cradled Lily tightly, feeling her own heart shatter. "Shh, it's okay, my love. I'm here. No one's taking you away." In the days that followed, Ava noticed subtle changes in Lily's behavior. The normally cheerful and talkative child became quieter and more anxious, refusing to sleep alone and panicking whenever Ava left her sight. Determined to protect Lily emotionally, Ava sought ways to create a sense of normalcy and safety. They established comforting new routines, reading stories every night, going to the park on weekends, and having painting sessions together. "Remember, Lily," Ava would often say, "no matter what happens, Mommy's love for you never changes. We're in this together." Meanwhile, the pressure on Ava continued to grow. The tabloids, fueled by anonymous sources which Ava suspected were Richard's investigators, started publishing sensational pieces about her past. Single mother fighting for custody. Has history of financial instability, screamed one headline. Millionaire's ex-maid. Hid pregnancy for years, proclaimed another. Ava felt suffocated by the negativity and lies, but Sarah helped her stay focused. They're trying to destabilize you, Ava, Sarah explained during a meeting. They want you to slip up, to overreact. Don't fall into that trap. But how can I just ignore all of this? Ava asked, frustrated. Sarah offered a gentle smile. You don't ignore it. You respond with dignity and truth. Stay focused on Lily. Show the world and the judge that you are who you've always been, a loving, dedicated mother. Following Sarah's advice, Ava decided to be proactive. She agreed to give an exclusive interview to a reputable journalist where she could tell her story in her own words. She spoke about the challenges of single motherhood, her unconditional love for Lily, and her hopes for the future. The interview was a success, sparking a wave of public support. People nationwide began sending letters and messages of encouragement to Ava. One afternoon, as Ava and Lily read through some of these letters together, Lily asked a question that took Ava by surprise. Mommy, why do so many people care about us? Ava pondered for a moment before replying, Because our story touched their hearts, sweetheart. They see how much we love each other, and they want to help. Lily smiled, hugging Ava. We're lucky, aren't we? Ava felt tears in her eyes as she returned her daughter's hug. Yes, my love, we're very lucky to have each other. That night, lying in bed, Ava reflected on everything they had been through. The battle was far from over. She knew Richard still had the resources and determination to keep fighting. But for the first time in a long while, Ava felt a real sense of hope growing in her heart. With Lily by her side, Sarah's unwavering support, and now the kindness of strangers moved by her story, Ava knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. The road ahead was still uncertain, but she was ready to walk it, step by step, guided by love and determination. Richard Sterling's office buzzed with activity. Stacks of documents covered every available surface as a team of investigators and lawyers worked feverishly. Richard, sporting deep circles under his eyes and a steely expression, pored over every paper handed to him. Sir, one investigator said, passing him a folder, I think we've found something. Richard opened the folder eagerly, his eyes scanning the pages. A cold smile crossed his lips. Excellent, he murmured. This might be exactly what we need. The next day, in court, tension was high as Richard's attorney rose. Your Honor, he began, we have crucial new information about Ms. Johnson that seriously calls into question her ability to provide a stable environment for Lily. Ava's heart tightened as the attorney presented a batch of documents to the judge. These records show Ms. Johnson has had severe financial problems in the past, the attorney went on, including several unpaid bills, an eviction, and even a brief personal bankruptcy declaration. Ava closed her eyes, shame and fear crashing over her. Those had been tough times, moments she had overcome with grit and determination, but hearing them aired out like this was profoundly painful. Judge Thompson frowned, examining the documents. Ms. Johnson, what do you have to say about this? Ava stood, her legs trembling. Your Honor, it's true I've had financial struggles. As a single mother, there were times I could barely pay the rent, but never ever did that affect how I cared for Lily. I worked multiple jobs and made every sacrifice possible to ensure she had everything she needed. The courtroom murmured, and Ava saw sympathetic expressions on a few faces, but Richard looked triumphant, certain he had found the ammunition he needed to turn the tide. At that moment, something unexpected happened. The courtroom door opened, and Veronica, Richard's ex-wife, walked in. All eyes turned to her as she moved decisively toward the front of the room. Your Honor, Veronica said, her voice clear and strong, I'd like to testify again. There's crucial information I didn't share before." The judge, surprised, nodded. "Go ahead, Mrs. Sterling." Veronica drew a deep breath before speaking. "I knew about Ava's pregnancy," she revealed, sending a collective shock through the room. "In fact, I found out before Richard did." Richard shot up from his seat. "What? How could you know?" Ignoring him, Veronica continued, "I saw the positive pregnancy test in the trash at the estate. That's why I demanded that Richard fire Ava, and I forced him to do it, threatening to expose all his affairs to the media if he refused." The courtroom fell into a stunned silence, everyone absorbing this bombshell. "Why are you revealing this now?" Judge Thompson asked. Veronica looked directly at Lily, who was sitting quietly beside Ava. "Because this little girl deserves the truth, and because I'm tired of living with this guilt." Richard is not the victim he claims to be. He knew, or at least suspected, that Ava was pregnant. He chose his empire and his image over his own daughter. Richard was livid, yelling for his lawyer to do something, anything, to stop Veronica. But it was too late. Her words hung in the air, impossible to take back. Judge Thompson, visibly disturbed by these new revelations, called the attorneys for a private conference. While they spoke in hushed tones, Ava felt a swirl of emotions: shock, relief, and a tinge of vindication. When the judge returned, his expression was grave. "In light of these new revelations, I'm inclined to disregard the allegations regarding Ms. Johnson's past financial troubles. They appear to be a direct consequence of Mr. Sterling's actions, rather than a reflection of her capabilities as a mother." Richard seemed to deflate, his previous confidence evaporating in spectacular fashion. The judge continued, "Furthermore, Mr. Sterling's actions, both in the past and during these proceedings, raise serious questions about his character and his true motivations in this custody battle." Ava could hardly believe what she was hearing. It was as though a colossal weight had been lifted from her shoulders. As the session ended, the judge announced he would need time to reconsider all aspects of the case in light of the new information. But it was clear to everyone in the courtroom that the tide had turned decisively in Ava's favor. As they left the courthouse, Ava found herself face to face with Veronica. For a moment the two women locked eyes, years of unspoken history passing between them. "Thank you," Ava said simply. Veronica nodded, tears in her eyes. "I should have done it a long time ago. I'm sorry for everything." Ava watched Veronica walk away, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Then she felt a small hand slip into hers. Lily looked up at her, with unasked questions shining in her eyes. "It's all right, my love," Ava said, pulling Lily in for a hug. "Things are finally starting to fall into place." That night, as she tucked Lily into bed, Ava reflected on the day's events. Richard's desperate last resort had backfired spectacularly. The truth, long buried, had finally come to light. Watching her daughter sleep peacefully, Ava felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in months. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time she truly believed everything would be all right. With a soft smile, she kissed Lily's forehead and whispered, "We did it, my love. We did it." The courtroom was brimming with tension as Judge Thompson took his seat. Ava clutched Lily's hand, trying to channel all her love and strength through that simple gesture. Across the aisle, Richard maintained an air of confidence, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of nervousness. After careful consideration of all the evidence and testimonies, Judge Thompson began, his grave tone reverberating through the silent room. "I have reached a preliminary decision in this custody matter." Ava's heart pounded, anxiety twisting in her chest. Taking into account financial stability and the available resources, the judge went on, "I hereby grant temporary custody of Lily Sterling to her father, Richard Sterling, until a final ruling can be made." Ava's world collapsed. It felt as though all the air had been sucked from her lungs. Tears welled up in her eyes as she held Lily even closer. Richard, on the other hand, stood with a triumphant smile, already moving as if to take Lily into his care immediately. Then something unexpected happened. "Wait," came a small but firm voice. It was Lily, cutting through the murmur of the courtroom. "I want to talk." All eyes turned to the 6-year-old, who was now standing, her own eyes bright with determination. Judge Thompson, taken aback, leaned forward. "Lily, would you like to say something to the court?" Lily nodded resolutely. "Yes, sir, it's important." After a moment's hesitation, the judge agreed. "Very well, Lily. You may speak." Lily walked to the front, stopping before the judge. Her small figure stood out in stark contrast to the imposing surroundings of the courtroom, but her posture was unyielding. "Sir," Lily began, her voice surprisingly clear, "I don't want to go live with him." She pointed directly at Richard. "I want to stay with my mom." A ripple of murmurs spread through the room, but Lily continued, undeterred. "My mom always takes care of me. She makes me feel safe and loved. When I'm sick, she stays up all night with me. When I'm sad, she makes me laugh. She works really, really hard to give me everything I need." Lily then turned to look directly at Richard. "But him? He's cold. When we met, he didn't even want to hug me. He talks to me like I'm a grown-up, not a kid. And," she paused, summoning all her courage, "he wouldn't help when I was really sick and needed treatment." The room fell silent, everyone taken aback by the girl's unusually mature words. "Mommy told me she went to ask him for help for my treatment, but he said no," Lily pressed on, her voice wavering slightly. "What kind of dad does that?" Richard looked stunned, his face pale, his earlier look of triumph completely gone. Lily then turned back to the judge again, tears now shining in her eyes. "Please, sir, don't take me away from my mom. She's everything I have, everything I've ever had. I love her more than anything in the world." The impact of Lily's words reverberated through the courtroom. Several jury members discreetly wiped away tears, and even some of the lawyers looked moved. Judge Thompson, visibly affected, leaned forward to address Lily. "Thank you for your courage in speaking, Lily. Your words are very important and will be taken into serious consideration." Lily nodded solemnly, then ran back to Ava, who hugged her tightly, tears streaming freely down her face. The judge observed them for a long moment, his gaze shifting from Ava to Richard, then back to Lily, now nestled in her mother's arms. In light of this unexpected testimony, Judge Thompson finally spoke, his voice laden with emotion. "I feel compelled to reconsider my previous ruling. This court will recess for 1 hour while I reflect on everything that has been said here today." As the judge departed, the room erupted in hushed conversations. Richard looked utterly defeated, slumped in his seat while his lawyers spoke to him urgently. Ava, still holding Lily close, looked at Sarah with a mix of hope and disbelief. Sarah smiled, tears in her own eyes, and whispered, "She did it. Lily may have just turned this entire case around." During the recess, Ava refused to let go of Lily for even a second. They sat together, exchanging reassuring words, united by their love and their shared determination. When Judge Thompson returned, silence once again descended upon the courtroom. Everyone sensed a pivotal moment was at hand. After careful reconsideration, the judge began solemnly, and taking into account Lily's heartfelt and sincere statement, "I am compelled to overturn my previous decision. Temporary custody of Lily will remain with Ava Johnson, pending a final ruling." Ava let out a choked sob of relief, hugging Lily even tighter. Richard looked stunned, as though he couldn't believe his ears. The judge continued, "Lily's words today remind us all of what truly matters in a custody dispute, the emotional well-being and happiness of the child." It is evident that the bond between Lily and her mother is profound and vital to her development. As the judge detailed the next steps, Ava could barely process the incredible turnaround that had just happened. She glanced at her daughter, her heart overflowing with love and pride. Lily, sensing her mother's gaze, looked up and smiled, a radiant, hopeful smile. In that instant, Ava knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, stronger than ever. Lily's small but powerful voice had changed everything. She had spoken not only for herself, but for every child whose voice is often overlooked in custody battles. And in that room full of people, her voice had finally been heard. The courtroom was utterly still as Judge Thompson took his seat again. His eyes, usually strict, now glimmered with emotion. After Lily's moving testimony, he cleared his throat before speaking, his voice steeped in conviction. Having heard Lily's sincere and courageous account, he began, "I am compelled not only to reverse my previous order, but to take a definitive stance on this case." Ava held her breath, her arms wrapped protectively around Lily. It is apparent that Lily's emotional well-being is inextricably tied to her relationship with her mother, Ava Johnson. Therefore, I hereby grant full and sole custody of Lily to Ms. Johnson, with visitation rights for Mr. Sterling to be determined at a later date. A collective gasp filled the air. Ava felt a surge of overwhelming relief as tears slipped freely down her cheeks. Lily gazed up at her, a beaming smile lighting up her entire face. Richard, however, looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His once arrogant posture had vanished, replaced by a look of shock and, surprisingly, deep self-reflection. As the judge continued detailing his decision, something unforeseen happened. Richard stood up abruptly. "Your Honor," he said, his voice trembling, "may I speak?" The judge, startled, nodded. Robert turned to face Ava and Lily. I made a terrible mistake," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "In my blind pursuit of control and what I thought was justice, I lost sight of what truly mattered, Lily's well-being." The courtroom was stunned into silence. Ava could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Ava," Richard went on, "I'm sorry for everything, for how I treated you in the past, for refusing to help when Lily needed it most, for this entire unnecessary legal war." He then turned to Lily. "And Lily, my daughter, forgive me for not being the father you deserved from the very start." Lily, with a wisdom far beyond her years, met Richard's gaze and gave a slight nod, a small, hesitant smile forming on her lips. Richard then addressed the judge again. "I accept your ruling, Your Honor, but I'd like to offer my full financial support to Lily and Ava, with no demands or conditions attached. It's the least I can do to begin making things right." Judge Thompson considered for a moment before looking at Ava. "Ms. Johnson, would you accept this offer?" Still in shock, Ava glanced at Lily, then back at Richard. I accept," she said slowly, but with clear boundaries. Lily's best interest must always come first. The judge nodded, satisfied. "Very well. We'll work out the details of this arrangement in the coming weeks." In the months that followed, a remarkable transformation took place in everyone's lives. Ava, with Sarah's help, who had become not just her lawyer but a close friend, found a new job as a coordinator at a nonprofit that supported single mothers. Not only did the position provide financial stability, but it also gave Ava a profound sense of purpose and a chance to help other women in situations just like hers. With Richard's financial support, Ava and Lily moved into a modest but comfortable home, complete with a small yard that Lily absolutely loved. The new house symbolized a fresh start for them, free from the long shadows of the past. Richard, for his part, entered intensive therapy. He was determined to understand his past behaviors and become a better father to Lily. Their first meetings as father and daughter were cautious and somewhat awkward, but with time, a genuine and warm relationship began to grow. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Richard took Lily to the park. Watching her play on the swing, he felt a mix of joy and profound regret. "Push higher, Daddy," Lily shouted, and Richard felt his heart swell with a kind of love he had never experienced before. Veronica, Richard's ex-wife, also made efforts to reconcile with Ava. The two women, once rivals, discovered they had more in common than they had ever thought. "I'm so sorry for everything," Veronica told Ava over coffee one day. "I was so consumed by my own anger and jealousy that I couldn't see how much I was hurting you and Lily." Ava smiled gently. The past is in the past. What matters is that we're all working together now, for Lily's sake. As Christmas approached, Ava decided to do something she had never imagined possible. She invited Richard and Veronica to join her and Lily for the holiday celebration. Christmas Eve arrived, bringing a soft fog and the scent of pine needles in the air. Ava's small house was aglow with twinkling lights and festive wreaths. Lily, dressed in a bright red dress, was nearly bursting with excitement. When the doorbell rang, Ava took a deep breath before opening it. Richard and Veronica stood there, their arms full of gifts, nervous smiles on their faces. "Come on in," Ava said, surprising even herself with the genuine warmth in her voice. Lily ran to greet them, hugging Veronica first, and then, after a brief hesitation, Richard. The smile on Richard's face as he embraced his daughter was pure, unadulterated joy. The evening passed in a surprising harmony. They shared a delicious meal, laughed at Lily's jokes, and exchanged presents. When it came time for Lily to open her gifts, her eyes shone with happiness at seeing all the adults in her life together, smiling and at peace. Later, while Lily played with her new toys, the adults gathered in the kitchen. Richard raised his glass for a toast. "To family," he said, his voice full of emotion. "Not the family we ever envisioned, but the family we've become." Ava, Veronica, and Sarah, who had joined them later, lifted their glasses in agreement. In that moment, as Ava looked around at the faces that not long ago had been adversaries, she felt a surge of deep gratitude and hope. The journey had been long and incredibly hard. There were moments when Ava thought she couldn't possibly go on. But now, seeing Lily so happy and safe, knowing she had her daughter's love and the support of people who genuinely cared, Ava knew it had all been worth it. As the evening wound down and a light snow began to fall gently outside, Ava picked up a dozing Lily. Richard and Veronica said their warm goodbyes, promising to return for New Year's Eve. After tucking Lily into bed, Ava returned to the living room. The Christmas tree lights blinked softly, casting a cozy glow. She picked up a framed photo on the mantelpiece, a recent picture of Lily beaming widely, surrounded by Ava, Richard, and Veronica. Ava smiled at the image, feeling a profound peace she hadn't felt in years. The road ahead would still have its challenges, building new family dynamics, healing old wounds, raising a child in a complicated world. None of it would be easy. But as she looked at that photo, at Lily's radiant smile, Ava knew they would manage it all together. As a non-traditional but loving family, united by their shared love for Lily, they would face whatever the future brought. With one last glance at the sparkling Christmas tree, Ava turned off the lights and headed to her bedroom. Tomorrow would be a new day, the start of a new chapter in their lives. And for the first time in a very long time, Ava felt genuinely excited to see what it would bring.